$7,500 on a new Jeep Compass Sport. It's our Jeep Celebration event going on now at Cars Plus in Mighty. Cars Plus, driven by you. Accessory special cannot be combined with other offers. See dealer for details.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
More problems for Empire star Jussie Smollett.
A judge said Smollett, known for the Fox TV series Empire, publicly commented about his case even though details were sealed. He was charged with lying to authorities and staging a hate crime last January. Those charges were suddenly dropped by Cook County Attorney Kim Fox in March. Retired Judge Sheila O'Brien says it's a good step by Cook County Circuit Judge Stephen Watkins to open the file, but
it's not the court file that's all important. It's Ms. Fox's file and the decision-making process into how this case was handled.
O'Brien wants a special prosecutor to look into the decision to throw out the case. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
This is not a story about hot air. Okay, it is.
Summit Utilities, which distributes natural gas, is getting together with dairy farmers around central Maine, hoping that what comes out of this might be turned into use for renewable energy. The company president, Kurt Adams, says they'll spend some $20 million on a renewable energy project that uses cow waste. Adams says it's part of the company's plan to invest in innovative technologies that mitigate climate change. John Saucier, Fox News.
Sometimes our passion for football goes too far.
A lot of people find loud audio annoying, but authorities say this reaction is out of bounds. A Pennsylvania woman's going to stand trial accused of beating her mother and shaving her head because she thought her mom had the radio volume too loud when she was listening to a Pittsburgh Steelers football game. A judge says Dolores Amarino is competent to stand trial, but that her daughter, a teenager also accused of taking part in the beating, is not competent and has to continue mental health treatment at a state psychiatric hospital. Both mother and daughter shared delusions of romantic relationships with members of the Steelers team. Sal Gianfresso, Fox News.
3, 2, 1.
SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket blasting off from Florida, carrying satellites. This is Fox News.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now? There are so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. The only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And as you know, we start the program that way every day. I'm always on the lookout for useful, informative, sometimes humorous anecdotes to kind of flesh out our discussion of the Second Amendment, why it's important, who's trying to take it away, who's in favor of it, etc. And today is no exception, but today I've got to go to Bearing Arms, and Bearing Arms has made a correction. Yesterday I read a section from Bearing Arms that dealt with a dozen Somali teenagers attacking people with hammers at a Minneapolis bus or train station. And of course I, in the tall tales manner of doing things, said I suppose the next thing is that the left will try to ban possession of hammers. But it turns out that the story that my premise was based on wasn't as accurate as it might have been, and today Bearing Arms ran a correction, saying, according to Snopes, the incident reported below wasn't quite what was described in our report. And this is what they said was false. According to University of Minnesota Police, the incident did not involve a physical attack, did not cause any injuries, and was not racially motivated. While Snopes is known to have a liberal bias, facts are facts. The point about the round capacity stands and the fact that this sounded so believable is also telling. But we want to get the facts right, and if they're not right, we need to own up to it. And that's, that's kind of the way us Second Amendment types operated. If we say something that isn't correct, then we have a responsibility to come back and correct that error. And that's what, and that's exactly what Bearing Arms did. They say, this is what's true. On May 17, University of Minnesota police officers cited 2 juveniles of Somali heritage for misdemeanors associated with brandishing pipes at a train station in the city. So instead of 10, it was 2. That's one element of the Second Amendment story for today. The second element is this. This goes to Joey Duenas, the chairman of the commission, the CCU, the Commission on the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, and Joey has had quite a time of it here after it was discovered that he was the chairman of a meeting that held an illegal meeting to assign salary increases to several management employees at the CCU. And after this came out, the Attorney General came out and said, those raises are no good. You've got to recover the money. Well, instead of recovering the money, there was a long delay, and finally, I think the CCU has decided to go after the money. I mean, to recollect the money. And while this was going on, after the Attorney General said the raises are bad, you got to get the money back, then there was a flurry of FOIAs asking for the minutes and the recording of that meeting. Kevin Kerrigan of the Post sent a FOIA in. I did. Kevin's FOIA was denied by the recording secretary of the CCU, a Lou Sablon. Mine was denied by Joey Duenas, who said that the CCU had decided to deny it. Well, no meeting of the CCU had occurred between the time that I sent in my FOIA and the time that Joey wrote back and said the CCU is denying your request. So I had to send in another FOIA saying, well, when was this meeting, Joey? I haven't received a response to that yet. In the meantime, the 3 members of the CCU have decided Joey was wrong, Judy was wrong. We're going to release that stuff. And that was the motion that passed. Now, I still haven't received the minutes. They haven't posted the recording of that meeting on the website at the public auditor's office as statute requires. But then yesterday, there was an oversight hearing conducted by Clint Rigel at which Joey testified. And Joey let loose a bombshell. I'm going to get to this in the card, but Joey said that it could, as far as he knew, other raises that the CCU had provided were done in executive session. So since this whole thing came up, it appeared to me that Joey had developed a certain skill in shooting himself in the foot. But given yesterday's performance, I have concluded, maybe Joey hasn't concluded as yet, but a single-shot pistol, even a semi-automatic pistol perhaps, isn't adequate for the job, and maybe Joey needs the figurative equivalent of an AR-15 to shoot himself in the foot, since he's been doing it so often with such frequency. So I'm putting Joey on the card here. Maybe Joey is a Second Amendment guy like the rest of us, because he would see the necessity perhaps of not even a semi-automatic weapon, an automatic weapon for shooting himself in the foot, as he has been doing so frequently. On the other hand, maybe that would provide an extra danger for Joey, because he also seems to have a proclivity for putting his foot in his mouth. And we certainly wouldn't want him to be shooting himself in the foot when his foot is firmly lodged in his mouth. So that's the Second Amendment for today. Let's move on to what's the next item here, Real Joe?
Zemi-Ikutni, sir.
Zemi-Ikutni. What does that mean exactly?
That means press the meat. But
press the meat.
Actually, we're trying to switch around meet the press.
I see. Is it kind of a bilingual backwards play on words, Real Joe?
That's exactly what it is, sir.
Yeah. Boy, you're always so quick with your answers. You know, no matter what question I pop up here, and I kind of turn my head a little to the right and say, Real Joe Cruz, you're right back there with an answer, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I noticed this morning on the Ray Gibson show that even Ray Gibson, the host of the Ray Gibson show, noticed how quickly you were able to answer my sometimes frivolous questions.
I'm just glad that he listens to Tall Tales, sir.
Yeah, well, it's hard to imagine informed people who want to stay in the know not listening to Tall Tales, isn't it, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
I suppose it's possible, at least in theory, but I don't know of anyone who I would advise to practice it. In fact, I can think of several people who perhaps don't, who really should.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to mention where they work, but you could start with the CCU and the CLTC. Okay, let's go to Meet the Press today. I've got my brand new blue pencil here today, so I look through the editorials. First of all, I check and make sure there's no plagiarism, especially when I do the Daily News editorial. And then I check English usage and grammar and things like that, mark it up with my blue pencil if necessary. And when I've done both the editorials, I will give the editorial that is the better of the two the coveted blue star. And I can only imagine the shrieks of joy that arise at the editorial boardroom of the winning, where the source of the winning editorial. Conversely, I can only imagine the long faces and the dabbing of the eyes with Kleenexes in the editorial boardroom of the newspaper that finished second in a race in which there are only two contestants. So let's see what the Daily News has today. The Daily News wants to talk trash again. Lack of island pride, according to Guam Visitors Bureau Chairman Pedro Sonny Atta, could be a deeper problem that leads to unkempt roads, beaches, parks, and even unusable public toilets and junk cars in private property that tourists see. In his Thursday address to the Rotary Club of Guam, Guam Visitors Bureau Chairman Peter Sonny Atta said we need to do something about the appearance of our island. because our image is hurting our bottom line. Unkempt roads, unkempt beaches, public and private properties, parks and facilities, junk cars, litter and trash are a reflection of a deeper problem on Guam, and that's a lack of pride in our island. Increased island pride can lead to a change of attitude and behavior, contributing to the GVB promotion of a beautiful destination and industry sustainability, Ada added. How about that? Ada added. From a marketing perspective, a cleaner island makes sense. In tourism industry, we're competing with world-class destinations that offer lower prices, he added. From a marketing perspective, a cleaner island makes sense. In the tourist end, we're competing with world-class destinations that offer lower prices. We offer clean air, beautiful beaches, and spectacular scenery. Sun and sand has always been our really, really strongest suit. And we don't want to junk it up. And according to most GVB exit surveys, the scenery is a big draw for visitors. Some 39% of Japanese visitors surveyed in the second quarter said they were motivated to visit the island because of natural beauty. Among South Korean visitors surveyed in the same period, 17% rated natural beauty as a motivation. But garbage-strewn beaches, filthy restrooms, or worse, locked restrooms, overflowing garbage cans, dilapidated buildings and deteriorated vehicles, sprouting vegetation detract from the overall visitor experience. This is not news to those directly working in our visitor industry who strive each day to provide better service, cleaner accommodations, more activities, and a pleasant experience to tourists. After all, people are paying thousands of dollars and devoting precious vacation days to visiting our island. But consider that the most sightseeing activity undertaken by visitors from South Korea, at least 48% was listed as self-guided, drove around. So stopping here for a second, when we first encountered Japanese tourists, it wasn't hard to spot a Japanese tourist. They arrived in buses. They didn't march in accordance with a cadence, but it was pretty close. They were always preceded by the leader who carried a red flag, and they always traveled in groups. Pretty easy to spot a Japanese tourist in those days. Not that way anymore with Koreans, who now outnumber the Japanese as far as our tourist population is concerned. This article here says 48% of them rent cars and drive around the island themselves. And my pal Jeff down at Jeff's Pirates Cove, the last time I asked him, "Hey Jeff, how's business?" That's exactly what he said. And then he said it's really changed. He said the Korean tourists are great. He said they don't travel around in buses. And for the entrepreneur, this is a big difference because it means that you don't have to make deals with the Japanese tour bus companies. I won't go into that. I expect there are others far more knowledgeable than I am about that part of the tourist industry. Because all you're doing is you're trying to appeal to those Korean tourists driving around in their Ford Mustangs, their convertibles, or whatever. So 48% of the South Korean tourists are listed as self-guided, drove around. That means those visitors ventured out of Tuman and went out on their own, almost certainly seeing some of the unkempt roads, unkempt beaches, public and private properties, parks, facilities, junk cars, litter, and trash that Ada was talking about. If we want to maintain a healthy visitor industry and a healthy economy, we need more than a sense of pride. We need a sense of urgency and commitment from the government and individual residents. Yeah, that's true. So I have a couple of humble suggestions. And remember, I've always been, as long as there's been a Tall Tales, I've been quite proud of my humility here on Tall Tale. But I do have a couple of humble suggestions, Real Joe Cruz. Perhaps the Visitors Bureau could send someone around with a camera, and that person would have two chores. First of all, take pictures of people who really do a nice job of taking care of their property. And if I love to drive around, I like to take the southern tour, drive down to Humatak and Malesu and Ilahan. You know, it makes a really nice afternoon. Maybe stop at Pirates Cove on the way back. Makes for a really nice afternoon. And I see some places that look really, really nice. So wouldn't it be nice if somebody from the Visitors Bureau took pictures of those places and ran it in the Post? You know, with a nice little caption, "This is the home of Mr. and Mrs. McGuaduk of Malesu," and, you know, a little squib about their house and and about them or whatever, you know, PR them a little bit. And so that they could be recognized. It's I think, a psychological fact that people tend to modify their behavior in accordance with what they get praised for, right? So if this were done correctly, it could possibly lead to a situation where folks would be a little bit competitive. I'm going to fix up my front yard, and I'm going to let the guys over at Visitors Bureau know that I did it. Maybe they'll come by and run my story. That's one part of it. Now, here's the other part that will cause a certain amount of, no, we can't do that. It would hurt their feelings. Here's the second part of it. Maybe we should do the same thing with those properties that turn out to be eyesores. The one with a dead car in the front yard.
Eyesore of the week.
Yeah, yeah. And go around and take pictures of the eyesore of the week or the eyesore of the day and run that in the newspaper so that people would say, man, I better get out and clean up my property. I don't want to be the eyesore of the day, the week, the month, or whatever, because it's that same psychological principle at work. And if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, well, once upon a time, I would have said, you're just spending a little money on film. But, of course, I'm dating myself. We now know that you don't need film to take photographs, Real Joe Cruz, right?
That's true, sir.
You know, if you live long enough, you'd never see the day. When I was the age of the Real Joe Cruz, if anyone had said, all you need to do to take pictures is to have a telephone, I'd have said, what do you mean? Take pictures, what are you, some kind of a nut? But that's the way it is now, isn't it, Real Joe Cruz?
It's the future.
All you need is a telephone. You can take all the pictures you want. And if you so desire, you could send those pictures all over the world. So that's the Daily News editorial and a couple of my humble suggestions. And we turn to the Post. In the war against meth on Guam, we could use more informants. Henry Alvandia, a former lieutenant with the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agencies, wasn't the dedicated hero who brought down an alleged multi-million-dollar drug business. Nevertheless, when he was sentenced Thursday in the district court, a federal prosecutor described him as the person key to busting one of the largest meth smuggling rings on Guam. Federal public defender John Gorman also described Alvandia as a star witness who busted alleged drug smuggling operators trafficking at least $6.36 million in methamphetamine, and that does not include potential proceeds from an apparent, you ready for this? That does not include potential proceeds from an apparent marijuana growing operation on Guam. Is it politically correct to mention that in a news article, Real Joe Cruz?
I don't know, sir. I haven't seen any evidence of such an operation.
The editorial goes on to say, it takes a corrupt person to know one. And in this case, though he caused shame to his family and tarnished the name of the agency he once served, Alvin Diaz's decision to turn into a federal informant after he got caught taking bribes from tobacco smuggling conspirators, he got caught, and then he decided he was going to be a good citizen, made him the central figure that helped bring the meth case to a closure. The case in which Alvin Diaz became star witness wasn't an easy one. 2 Guam juries couldn't reach a unanimous decision, and there were allegations of jury tampering. In the end, the third trial against Raymond Martinez and Juanita Mosier was moved to California. Ultimately, the two decided to cut a plea deal to charges that were lesser than running a multi-million-dollar drug operation. They now face possibly 4 years behind bars in federal prison. As for Alvin Diaz, he will have to pay the government the equivalent of $29,000 in bribes he received when he was wearing a customs badge while dealing with alleged smuggling co-conspirators at the same time. He was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison, a generous departure from a nearly 6-year prison term he faced had he not cooperated to the satisfaction of what they call the federal government, but we know what it really is, don't we, Real Joe Cruz?
It's a national government,
Yeah,
sir.
absolutely. Used to be the federal government, but no more.
Not anymore.
In his 40 years of practice as an attorney, federal prosecutor Frederick Black, also known as Fred Black, said he had not seen any defendant cooperate more than Alvin Diaz. It may be possible to completely eliminate the methamphetamine market on Guam, Black said, but it may be mitigated through the cooperation of individuals like Alvin Diaz. Guam's meth crisis continues to ruin many good people's lives and the lives of their families. We need more informants to shift sides away from the bad guys. These insiders can do something positive by turning over information that could help keep our community from further harm. True enough. Now let's just talk a little bit about the substance of that particular. Ooh, I lost my call screener. I don't have the password. So we're going to see a cameo appearance of the Real Joe Cruz on camera right here on Tall Tales. For those of you who have wondered what the Real Joe Cruz looked like, here's Joey.
And we're live.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So if you watch Tall Tales long enough, you get to see the Real Joe Cruz. If that isn't an incentive to watch Tall Tales every day, I don't know what it would be. Okay, Francis, I got a break coming up. I'm going to get to you right after the break.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Okay, I think it's coming up soon.
Yeah, we're on Route 1 and near the airport intersection, right?
There, see it? What's the promo code? Look for the promo code.
Check out the Vantage Digital Billboard and reap the rewards. Catch the promo code on the screen and get $10 off your stroll ride by inputting the promo code on the Stroll Guam app.
Did you see it? You got it. I got it. You just focus on driving.
Take advantage today and take a look at Vantage Advertising's digital billboard located on Route 1 at the airport intersection. We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Soaring over the confusion with my superpowers of talking to Francis. Good afternoon, Francis.
Good afternoon, Bob.
So, what can you tell me today, Francis?
I look forward to your afternoon talk show.
So do I, Francis. It's a lot of fun.
There was a time in my life when I had to leave the island. Are you still there, Bob?
I'm still here. We got a kind of a crackly phone connection, Francis.
Yeah.
But I'm here.
There was a time in my life when I had to go on a complimentary scholarship from the BOP, Bureau of Prison.
I see.
And I was pursuing my postgraduate course, and it was Institute for Correction and Technology.
Okay.
While there, I was associated with some of the biggest bankers in the world, doctors, and I learned a lot from them. I really picked up on a lot of the cases, you know, where we don't speak about why people were there, but as the time went on, we got closer, and I was with the Manuel Noriega clan, the Escobar clan, and correct me if I'm wrong, Manuel Noriega, wasn't he CIA, a special agent for CIA for the last 30 years before he started to negotiate with some foreign country at the Panama Canal?
He was on the CIA payroll. I don't think he was what you'd call a special agent, but he clearly was on the CIA payroll, yeah.
All right. Anyway, I was going through some informational gathering over there, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and when I got back home, I was very relaxed, you know, and more secure, and understood a lot of things that were going on, you know, especially with the conflicts that were going on all around the world, and especially in I guess in our area. There's always conflict, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was wondering what, I was really serious about honoring, celebrating, you know, and just giving thanks to the Memorial Day this coming Monday. And after that, I think we have a Micronesian fair coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
And that included the Sons and Daughters, San Diego, FSM, FAS, citizens, stuff like that. We're looking forward to that occasion. And after that, we're going to honor my friends and my family, which is a lot. I'm not alone. We're going to take time out to honor and give respects to everybody that all the people that we have lost along the way, even before my time during the celebration of Liberation Day. For one reason, we give respect to our elders. You especially probably had a taste of that, because we're pretty young. We're closing 70s, but I guess you had that experience.
I'm on the threshold of geezerhood, Francis.
Mm-hmm. So we decided to give respect to our parents. Like they say in the old days, celebrating the end of wars, honoring our heroes, burying our dead, and just giving them all the respect for that one day.
I've got a post here from Chris Chip, Francis. He said, I hope some people reflect on how good they got it due to the ultimate sacrifice our brothers and sisters made for this great country. And then he says,
that's where I'm at, and I feel for the elders. But there are some out there that are, there was a time when during the protesting back then, I was really involved, and I had to disrespect the flag, and because for some reason I kind of like went under social protest and was kind of like making demands for something like constitutional protection or something like that, and I as time went by and we get caught up in our own little obligations here with family and like you say, cleaning the yard and just making sure the bills are paid. And, I kind of like, I don't know, maybe I grew up a little bit. I don't know.
Well, that's good to hear, Francis. So you perhaps have abandoned some of your radical thought process concerning the nationalist ideal. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and some of them were kind of like surprised because I am, I really want to leave it up to our leaders, governor, lieutenant governor, and she's doing very good. She's working it out. Hopefully that mutual thing we were talking about, a better mutual relationship. I don't know what's happened. I'm not going to go there, but I'm looking forward to something better. Really better.
Well, interesting enough, Francis, you remember the other day that you asked me, you told me that you'd had a little verbal shootout with Trini, and I put that on the calendar.
Yes, sir.
Well, we're going to talk about that same thing today. That's the top item on the calendar, so you should enjoy that part of the program, talking about political status and those things, right?
Yes, and I'm really digging into it. I got my law books out. And I have my old developing thing. I know I had to dust it off the development of social economic on the island and politically and all that. And I'm really trying to find time to really get back into it. I lost track. I was so caught up, with every little thing, homework and stuff. But anyway, I pray that they wake up and understand that I never left them. I was never against them, but then again, I have my reasons and my rights to question and find out and where in the hell are you guys? Because I think, for all I know, they could be all consolidated and into an independence group, and I don't know that because they're the only ones that know what they do. I'm not afraid to speak out. Trust me, Uncle Bob. I'm pretty much very well covered, and so I'm not worried about it. I'm just not. I'm just gonna tell the truth and let them know how I feel.
Well, you came to the right place, Francis. I'm really glad you called in today.
All right.
Thanks again.
You're welcome, Uncle.
Okay, adios, Lai.
Have a nice weekend.
You too. Okay, so Francis, a once upon a time card-carrying nationalist, has had some second thoughts And we'll get into that whole idea again about, should Guam really be independent? Or can we stay with the United States and try to work on our relationship with the United States, work on the stuff that we do like, try to change the stuff we don't like. I'm going to just mention a few things about the Post editorial. I will then award the coveted Blue Star, and we will then move on to the card. I've got what I started out as Francis versus Trini, and then underneath that, I've got Joey and Invisible Ignorance versus the Ratepayers. I've got Terlahi and Marsh versus the United States Marine Corps, and a repeat performance of Our Carl on equality. So as usual, we've got a really top-notch show lined up for you today. And Francis said he hoped that I enjoyed my weekend. Actually, it's going to be really difficult for the Real Joe Cruz and I to enjoy our weekends because it's bad enough when we've got 2 days away from Tall Tales, Saturday and Sunday. But Ray Gibson, in his infinite wisdom, has said that there will be no Tall Tales on Monday, so we're going to have to Jones for 3 days. And I know it's going to be tough out there on you and my international radio listening audience, too, especially on Monday when they say, gosh, it's 4 o'clock and there's no Tall Tales. But we'll grit our teeth and we'll get through it somehow, won't we, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so the Post makes some interesting points here about, I know the smart money over here hates the sound of a plea bargain. He's saying, no, don't plea bargain. Lock him up and throw the key away. But plea bargaining is an essential part of our criminal justice system. More than 90% of criminal cases don't go to trial because the defendants plead them away. It's usually only the really hard cases that go to trial, or the cases with, such a high sentence that the defendant figures, I don't have much chance, but I might as well roll the dice because this guy James Leon Guerrero is a good example. Who was one of the guys that robbed the bank of Guam, and somehow he got off. So that happens once in a while. But the plea bargaining is actually the lifeblood of the criminal justice system. And that means that the prosecution has to make a deal sometimes with some rather unsavory characters. The editorial was pretty kind to Henry Alvandia, but Henry was far from a model citizen. And the old saying amongst prosecutors is this: if the devil's on trial, I got to go to hell to find my witnesses. And that's kind of the prosecutor's dilemma. And the Post, the fact that the call to action in the Post is for the people who are involved in illegal meth business. The call to action is for them to come forward and help the prosecution. Somehow I think it's going to require a little bit more than that. So good editorial on the part of the Post. It gave me something to talk about, which is part of a good editorial. But I think I like the Daily News better because it was exactly down and dirty. It told us something about ourselves that we really aren't that anxious to hear. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we would like we would like people to talk about Guam the way they talk about maybe Victoria, British Columbia. What a beautiful place. Everything is so clean and well kept, and that's what we'd like to hear people say. And we don't like it when we're talking about unkempt roads, unkempt beaches, parks, unusable toilets, junk cars sitting out in private property. So the Daily News got down and dirty and kind of told it like it was. So here it goes. The Daily News got it. Yeah. And they had some competition this time because the Post really had an editorial. So we then go to the card, and the top item on the card is Francis versus Trini, which is what brought this subject up in the first place. That our friend Francis, who used to be a staunch nationalist, said he'd been to one of the Independence Task Force meetings or committees meetings, and he was shut down by Trini. That when he tried to ask a question or whatever, he felt like he wasn't getting to first base. So he apparently couldn't find someone to listen to him there. So if you're ever in a situation where you can't find anyone who will listen to you, what should you do, Real Joe Cruz?
Call AAA Talk.
That's the secret. AAA Talk. Yeah. We not only like what you have to say, we need what you have to say, right, Real Joe Cruz? So that brought this item up, and what we've been doing in the context of Francis versus Trini is we've been talking about what I label as the Commission for Chamorro Independence, which has been misnamed as the Commission for Decolonization because that commission has not taken step one towards decolonizing the island of Guam or the territory of Guam or however you want to describe it. It has only been a soapbox for Michael Bavacqua and now Melvin Wanpat Bora to climb on top of to advocate for an independent Guam. That is a Guam that is sovereign and is not not linked with the United States any more than any other sovereign power is. And I am not in favor of that at all. First of all, I'm not one to buy a pig in the poke. I don't know what it is that the independence folks really envision for an independent Guam. And my fear is that, that given the devotion to identity politics on the part of the independentistas, that what we would wind up with in an independent Guam is just more identity politics and an adoption of other aspects of neo-Marxism and cultural Marxism, so that we might find ourselves living in the socialist Chamorro Republic of Guahan. And that would not, for me, that's not what I want to do. It's just for me, not for anybody else. I like Guam the way it is. I think there are some ways that we could improve our relationship with the United States, but I like it the way it is, and I'm not willing to throw away the good things that we have here, the Constitution, the rule of law, separation of powers, etc., for a utopian pie in the sky. I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back for the last 10 minutes before the halftime show.
Business travel just got easier. Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 Data-to-Go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is Data-to-Go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant. Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Okay, so here we are back from my favorite song, my favorite bumper music, Dave Brubeck's Take 5, and I've got a caller on the line who once again wants to make his mark.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Go for it, Mark.
So I am of the same mind as you. I mean, I kind of like the status quo, but what I'm curious about is, you know, we've always been called an unincorporated territory. So what does it take to become an incorporated territory, and what are the benefits to it? Is that something that you might be able to espouse on?
Well, what it would take would be a lack of understanding of what an unbeneficial status incorporated territory is. Hawaii was an incorporated territory before it became a state. As an incorporated territory, the president appointed the governor of Hawaii. People in Hawaii paid United States income tax, not like we have here with our territorial income tax. People in Hawaii were entitled to all of the constitutional protections, but none of the things that none of the political rights that a person living in one of the states would have. So there are really no advantages at all in being an incorporated territory. Being an unincorporated territory is far more favorable, Mark.
Okay. So the shortcomings of that would be no voting representation in Congress, not being able to vote for president. But then you don't have to pay the federal income tax and have to turn around and pay a local income tax at the same time. So
that's where we are here. But if you're an incorporated territory, yeah, you're paying the federal income tax.
And then you have to pay a local income tax to make up for the shortfall.
That's right.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. The status quo is looking better and better all the time.
If a person were to sit down and make a list of all of the advantages of being an unincorporated territory, which I've done from time to time, and then come up with a sexier name and a sexier description than status quo and unincorporated territory, everybody would want it.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right on that. Wow. Okay. Well, that's something to. So I guess you don't want to call it status quo. You want to call it. How about let the good times roll? That one works.
Let's see. Let the good times roll.
Means we just keep
les bons temps rouler. That's okay. Yeah. When you drive into When you drive into Louisiana, that's what the sign says. Let the good times roll in French.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they know how to party down there, so I guess so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for your input. Well, you know, I think I was talking with one of the independent people. It wasn't one of the head people, but, you know, they came up with this idea that, you know, we could charge, you know, we have a $700 million budget, GovGuam budget, and a few $100 million that we get every year from the feds, and someone made some mention, and I don't know if anybody else is, if you've heard it on the radio, is that, you know, we could charge the federal government $2 billion a year or something to that effect for rent on the basis, and then we would have all the money we needed for GovGuam.
Well, the United States doesn't pay rent for bases. This is another one of those myths, like personnel matters can't be disclosed. Yeah, it's a myth. The United States enters into treaties with independent countries, and in return for allowing, or perhaps as a quid pro quo, the United States will say, we'll provide you with this kind of foreign aid, or we'll do this for you, or do that for you. In the case of the Philippines, part of the deal with the Philippines was we'll let Philippine citizens enlist in the United States Navy. And up until Subic Bay closed, 2,000 Filipinos every year were enlisted into the Navy from Subic Bay because, the Filipinos saw that as a real benefit. But the United States doesn't pay rent for bases. And then look at our situation here. The situation here is that the United States owns what a lawyer would tell you is fee simple title to the military bases. That is, as a matter of title, it's an unencumbered title, just perhaps like the title that you have to your house, right? Not to mention the fact that the United States has political sovereignty over those bases. So let's say that the United States said, okay, pursuant to Article 4, Section 3, you want to be independent out there in Guam? Zap, you're independent. So now this boogeyman that everybody wants to get away from called the United States is going to be so gracious as to pay rent on property that it already owns?
It already owns?
Maybe not.
Okay, well, that was just something that was thrown at me the other day, and I was like, but they own it. And they said, yeah, but if we declare independence, then we'll take it back. I was like...
Yeah, I can see that happening. Yeah.
But, yeah, we're going to take it back by force.
Right.
All right. Well, it's always great listening to you, Bob. I know I don't call in as often as I want to, but you have a great weekend.
Well, it's not going to be so hot because no tall tales until next Tuesday, Mark, but the real Joe Cruz and I will suffer through it somehow.
Well, it is Memorial Day, and thank you for your service.
Well, not me, because I'm still alive. Let's show some gratitude to those who paid the ultimate price, right, Mark?
Well, those guys I thank for their sacrifice, but you're a Marine, so you got it.
Thank you very much, Mark. Enjoy the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Political spy games. I'm Del Walters, Fox News. President Trump instructing Attorney General William Barr to declassify any documents related to surveillance of the Trump campaign in 2016.
President Trump issuing a memo late Thursday ordering the intelligence community to cooperate with Attorney General William Barr's investigation into surveillance of the Trump 2016 campaign and the origins of the Russia and Mueller probe. Devin Nunes, a ranking Republican on the House Intel Committee, telling Fox's Shannon Bream,
"We want everything out, whether it's good for Republicans or bad for Republicans. We want it all out."
But the committee's chairman, Democrat Adam Schiff, is accusing the Trump administration of weaponizing law enforcement, tweeting, quote, "The cover-up has entered a new and dangerous phase." In Washington, Sean Lanchel, Fox News.
President Trump has repeatedly said his campaign was spied on, charges the FBI denies. And meanwhile, the war of words between the president and House Speaker continued, with the rhetoric growing even more heated.
Hours after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi suggested that President Trump's family conduct an intervention on the commander-in-chief, the president lobbed his own attack on the top Democrat in the House.
Crazy Nancy. I tell you what, I've been watching her, and I have been watching her for a long period of time. She's not the same person. She's lost it.
The president said Pelosi doesn't understand the new trade deal with Mexico and Canada, and he reiterated his position that he won't cooperate on any legislation until Democrats stop their investigations of the president and his family. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
A boat with passengers crossing a river capsized in southwestern China, killing 10. 12 divers working the scene on Friday. 8 people still missing. State broadcaster CCTV reporting.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket blasting off from Florida will carry the first Starlink internet satellites into orbit. This is Fox News.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sweet and Smoky Steak and Guac Signature Wrap. How would you like it? I'll take my ex-girlfriend, just checking in. Aw.
Hey, David, it's me, just checking in. I'm doing great. Just got the new Sweet and Smoky Steak and Guac Signature Wrap from Subway. Creamy guacamole, smoky sweet with Hio mesquite sauce, and double the tender steak. They just know what I want before I do. So, yeah, things are going pretty great for me. Subway, make it what you want. Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub. Okay, bye.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice.
The White House is strongly considering sending more troops to the Middle East.
With the U.S. carrier strike group already in the Middle East, the Trump administration is weighing a plan to send as many as 10,000 troops to the region. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told Fox and Friends,
the exact force posture the president's looking at every day. We're evaluating the risks, making sure that we have it right.
Democratic Senator Chris Murphy concerned the administration is trying to provoke Iran.
This is blind escalation with the hope that the Iranians will come to the table in the end.
The U.S. has been putting the squeeze on Iran with sanctions targeted at oil, the country's main source of revenue. In Washington, Rachel Fox News.
Sadly, it has happened again.
Don Cash had a lifelong dream of climbing the 7 summits, the highest mountains on each of the continents. That dream was realized, but the accomplishment short-lived. Cash passed away at the peak of Mount Everest after reaching its summit and completing his life's goal. His daughter says that while no official cause of death has been determined yet, they believe the Utah climber suffered a heart attack. Cash had left his job as a sales executive to climb the tallest peaks on each continent, texting his son upon his ascent to the summit of Mount Everest that he felt so blessed to be on the mountain he read about for the last 40 years. Don Cash was 55 years old. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Fred Rogers honored. That's Mr. Rogers to you and me.
Late star of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Fred Rogers had a code to Friends 143, which stood for the number of letters in the words, I love you.
Many ways to say 143. It's such
In honor of the Pennsylvania native, the state's governor, Tom Wolf, is declaring May 23rd 143 Day, calling it the first statewide day of kindness. Residents encouraged to spread the love and to share their kind acts on social media using the hashtag 143Day in PA. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
I'm Del Walters. This is Fox News.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
So here we are again after that huge entertaining halftime show that we all have learned to love so much. It would be nice. I don't think I have the ability to do this, but it would be nice if on Monday at 4 p.m. we could do the halftime show, even if Tall Tales weren't going to air. I guess that would be just wishful thinking, though. So we're back, and I'm going to go into Francis versus Trini. And once again, something came up the other day that I didn't have a chance to finish. It came up just right at the end of the day. So Jesse Limtiaco, you know, you keep grinding that axe, and you'll put an edge on it one of these days. But you got to keep grinding it. So Jesse on Thursday said, around 1900, all the way up to the invasion of the Japanese invasion, the U.S. Navy's number one goal was to make Chamorro people learn English and learn American ideology. I'll repeat that. Number one goal was to make Chamorro people learn English and learn American ideology. Now, I went through kind of a short history lesson there, the history of the Spanish-American War, my theory that it was that the whole invasion of Cuba and Puerto Rico was pretextual. What the United States really wanted was Puerto Rico. I'm sorry, not Puerto Rico. What the United States really wanted was the Philippines, and in order to support the Philippines, the United States needed coaling stations in Hawaii and on Guam. And that's why in the treaty that ended the Spanish-American War, the United States asked for Guam. It didn't ask for the rest of Micronesia. It didn't ask for all of the Spanish islands, the Marshalls, the Marianas, and the Caroline Islands. The United States didn't ask for any of them, just asked for Guam because we wanted it for a coaling station. And we used it as a coaling station until shipping switched to oil instead of coal. And then in 1922, a naval limitation treaty was entered into where the United States agreed that it wouldn't fortify Guam. But it's really a leap in logic to think that when Henry Glass pulled into Guam, he said, okay, now we're going to go ashore, and our number one priority is to teach these people who live here English and for them to learn American ideology. Or that ever happened during the period between the end of the Spanish-American War and the Japanese invasion. Okay, and then there's another post yesterday, again from Jesse Limtiaco. This link is where I read that naval governors at the time needed Chamorro people to learn the English language in America and American. And he cites a link that has the name Hattori in it. Well, the Hattori in that link is Anne Hattori, who holds herself out as a history professor at the university. Anne Hattori has no credibility with me as a history professor at all. So I wouldn't say that whatever Anne Hattori says in that link is not true. I'm just saying that Anne Hattori and her writing has a heavy burden with me because I don't think the stuff that she writes is persuasive. And I'll tell you why. Because she was a participant in the John Oliver show last week tonight when she cited what she said was language from one of the cases in one of the insular cases, Downs versus Bidwell, that she used to prove that the United States and all the insular cases were racism. And I identify it as the native inhabitants language. And what Anne Hattori said on that radio program was just false. And I wrote a letter to Robert Underwood, who's the president of the university, who had posted a column in one of the papers talking about academic freedom. And he distinguished academic freedom from freedom of speech. He said freedom of speech means, you can go ahead and shoot off your mouth. But if you're going to exercise academic freedom, you must not only speak out, but you must be correct. And Anne Hattori's quote was an exercise in incorrectness. I felt so strong about it that, that when it appeared in the Daily News, I wrote a long letter to the editor debunking Anne Hattori. And one of the characterizations that I would bring to bear is that, there's the old saying that sometimes people will go through a document and engage in cherry picking. Well, what Anne Hattori did wasn't cherry picking, it was horse apple picking. And if you're interested in that, Jesse and anybody else, you can go to frombob.blogspot.com and go to the and scroll down until you come to Voice of the People, October 28, and you'll see exactly what I mean. But that piece there tells you why Anne Hattori doesn't have credibility with me. I identify Anne Hattori as not an orthodox historian, but one who engages in critical theory. Now, I spent a little time the other day talking about critical theory and what it amounts to, and for emphasis, I'll repeat it. Critical theory is a social theory oriented toward critiquing and changing society. Critiquing and changing society as a whole, in contrast to traditional theory oriented only to understanding or explaining it. So when Anne Hattori writes, everything that I've ever seen her write, her writing is not aimed towards understanding what happened. Her writing is aimed at changing society. And here's a little bit more. Critical theory today. Over the years, the goals and tenets of critical theory have been adopted by many social scientists and philosophers who have come after the Frankfurt School. We can recognize critical theory today in many feminist theories, feminist approaches to conducting social science, in critical race theory, I'll repeat that, in critical race theory, cultural theory, in gender and queer theory, and in media theory and media studies. So if your strongest argument is based on what Anne Hattori says, Jesse, I'm not going to tell you that I can't be convinced, but I'm telling you this, you're really taking a hard road towards it. And let's go back to what you posted. You said, this link is where I read that naval governors at the time needed Chamorro people to learn the English language and American ideologies, and contrast that with your first post where you said the U.S. Navy's #1 goal was to make Chamorro people learn English. Is there a difference there? If I took both of those posts as they're written as gospel, I can't imagine the United States Navy or anybody in the United States Navy saying our #1 goal is to make Chamorro people learn English. Now, as per my explanation of the other day, between 1898 and 1900, as you were 1950, Guam was not even a colony. It was a possession. It was, in effect, a large naval station. And the person in charge of the naval station was a Navy captain. And Navy captains in charge of ships or bases or whatever run things like naval establishments. And that's how the naval government ran Guam. They didn't see themselves as enlightened saviors who were sent to Guam as missionaries to inculcate the people with some particular kind of ideology or whatever. Their job was to do their tour on Guam and make sure that the place ran properly. Yeah, and, this is one of the reasons that martial law is not a good deal. You know, I wouldn't want to live somewhere where there was martial law, because the emphasis is not on the people. The securing and protection of individual rights is not the object of a military government. I don't care whose military government it is. That's not the way it works. Some military governments are more benevolent than others, and occasionally you will even run across benevolent neglect. But, you know, Jesse, if your strongest argument is that the number one priority of the naval government was to make Chamorros learn English, you got a little work to do. Okay, I'm going to take a break here and listen to our Tom. I guess you opened up the Tom lines, huh? Okay. Good afternoon, our Tom.
How you doing, my friend?
Good.
Anyway, there's just one thing that I really like about the writing of the founders of the Frankfurt School. Let me just quote a couple of sentences from their writing. Is a house may be large or small, as long as the neighboring houses are likewise small. It satisfies all social requirements for a residence. But let there arise next to the little house a palace, and that little house shrinks to a hut. It kind of just touches your heart there a little bit.
Well, and that's, of course, the design of the rhetoric of the Frankfurt School. You know, the Frankfurt School and neo-Marxism is based on, let's make people jealous. Let's separate people into identity groups and then make one group jealous of another. But go on, Tom.
All right. Yeah, well, I'm finished with the quote anyway. But let me just ask you to unconfuse me a little bit because about colonialism, because the true definition of a colony in all the dictionaries that I've been reading is a piece of land, a country or a territory that is discovered by another foreign country and occupied by the settlers from that foreign country that discovered this new land. But that's not the case in Guam. So why would they say that Guam is a colony when the settlers from America did not settle here?
Well, because the reason for that, Tom, is that they want to call people from who came from the mainland, they want to refer to them as settlers, because settlers is a pejorative term. It's not a nice thing to call somebody. So if they can't make the fiction fly that Guam is a colony because of the settlers, then they wouldn't be able to refer to folks as settlers. But I think the classic colony, like per your definition, is Australia, New Zealand, North America, South Africa, etc., which certainly doesn't apply here, because right now the people who were born and raised in the 50 states are an extremely small minority. There are more people from the FSM here than there are palefaces, Tom.
Yeah, so if the Decolonization Commission insists that we are a colony, why is it? There is no law in the United Nations or anywhere else that says we have to decolonize. There's no requirement in the world that requires us to decolonize. If we are happy the way we are, if they might want to call it colony or whatever, let it be so. If the majority of the people want to stay the way we are, leave us alone.
Well, and that's the question I pose, you know, with this made-up choice of so-called decolonization, independence, free association, and statehood, made-up choice. What if the folks that live here don't want any of those three things? They're saying, we don't care about the United Nations or anything else. We're happy the way we are. Leave us alone. Would the folks in the United Nations then shuffle papers around and pass resolutions and say, well, even if you don't want to, you got to, because, you know, we're the United Nations?
Yeah, But before I let you go, I just want to say that I went back in time. I went into my time machine and I went back in time, and I found the things that just puzzles me is that where would we be on this island if we never got so-called discovered by Magellan, and if the Spaniards never did colonize Guam, and the America went to war with Spain and America won, Guam would never have been ceded to the United States because if Spain never had Guam to begin with.
I see what you're saying, Tom.
Known to exist in this world.
And I've made the case that had it not been for American colonialism in 1898, where we wanted to take the Philippines, if we hadn't done that, then we'd all be speaking Japanese today, because the Japanese geopolitically were in a very expansive mode at the beginning of the 20th century, and they would have snapped Guam up in a heartbeat had it not been a United States territory, just like they snapped up all the rest of Micronesia. When World War I broke out, the Japanese didn't have any quarrel with the Germans, but they quickly declared war on Germany so they could come down and occupy the German islands, the Marshalls, the Marianas, and Palau, where they stayed until the end of World War II. And the same thing would have happened to Guam had it not been for our imperialism, and had there not been a World War II. You know, I would be sitting here saying, "Hey, watashi wa Nihongo wa wakarimasen."
That's right, because the Northern Marianas were occupied by Germany.
Exactly. Yeah, until the Japanese took it as a prize of war.
Yeah. But anyway, I kind of honor those people over in Cuba, the ones that sank the USS Maine, because if the Maine wasn't sunk, America would never have gone to war with Spain. Imagine that.
I can, and you know, there's also a theory that the sinking of the Maine is what was called a false flag operation, that the United States actually got somebody to sink the Maine to give the United States the pretext to start the Spanish-American War and take the Philippines.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's been nice going back in time for a while. I'm back now to our time, so I'll listen to the Tall Tales a lot more, and for Monday, I'm just going to turn back my recorder and play my archive.
Good call, Tom. Way to spend a holiday. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. Bye.
All right. All right. See, I got a couple of calls here on the line. I've got Jesse and Chris. So let me start out with Jesse. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hey, Senator Bob.
Sir.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. You know, I'm just commenting about the fact that the military, naval governors wanted the Chamorro people to speak English. You know, I'm just referencing what Ann Hattori wrote. You know, she was writing about that, and those were the quotes that were in her paper. You know, those were testimonies by the naval governors. So, you know, from the 1900 all the way up to the 30s, and right before the war, they were still trying to get Chamorro people to speak English. So that's all I'm saying. And
was it the number one priority of the Navy, Jesse?
It obviously has to be, because they're trying to educate the people, the Chamorro people.
So they didn't care anything about taking care of the ships?
Obviously, that's the military's duty, right?
Well, you said it was the number one priority. The number one priority.
In school, it is, right? It would have been, because what's the use of them being there in Guam?
The use of them being there in Guam, you know, I made the case yesterday that had there not been any people on Guam at all, the Navy would have still been here.
Right, but America, what I'm trying to say is that Ann Hattori was pointing out that the naval governors had a challenge for that long, even three decades after they took it back from Spain.
Well, if I were to demur...
Number one priority, that's just wrong. That's a priority for them.
Well, even if I were to demur to Ann Hattori, and I've told you what I think about Ann Hattori as a historian, I come back to your post where you said around 1900, all the way up to the invasion of Japanese, the U.S. Navy's #1 goal was to make Chamorro people learn English.
Okay, well, maybe I should have reworded it, but it was one of the goals of the naval governors at the time when they were giving testimony to the Congress out there. You know, they were telling them, hey, we need these people to start.
Okay, but you know,
and all that stuff.
In order to deal with Jesse, in order to deal with complicated subjects, you have to really be careful what words you use.
Well, I'm sorry. I apologize. Doesn't mean that I'm just saying that, you know, my grandparents too, it's just kind of offensive when you say that it's not a priority, because they told me they did get disciplined if they didn't talk English.
Was it the #1 goal? I mean, you keep coming back. I'm just taking what you said.
To me, it seemed that way. It seemed that it was the #1 goal because they were trying to do it for 40 years.
What year were you born, Jesse?
I was in. I don't want to give that out on the radio.
Yeah, well, you know, it seems. You said it seems that way to you. You know, a lot of things seem to me.
Were you born in that time, Mr. Bob?
I beg your pardon?
That time?
What?
Were you born during the 1900s and 30s?
I was.
Oh, were you living on Guam at the time?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so how do you know then that Ann Hattori is making up baloney or whatever?
I gave you my explanation that Ann Hattori is a critical theory historian, and I gave you some place where you can look as an example.
The #1 goal. Okay, I'll stand corrected and take that back. I could, you know.
Okay, what do you want to say then, Jesse?
I'm just trying to say that you know, you were talking about the whole like Frankfurt School and how these people are doing this ideology in schools and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Chamorro people literally, even myself. Now I go back to myself. I have to pledge allegiance to the flag for when I was in elementary, right?
Okay.
And, you know, they just say, okay, you have to do this or else you'll get in trouble and it's disrespectful and all that stuff to not do it, right? And America is, you know, you have to be thankful for America, all that stuff, right?
I don't see where you're going with this, Jesse.
No, because you're trying to say one of the callers was saying that the schools are getting in how do you say, like, people are coming in and putting their leftist ideologies and all these
absolutely
all this nonsense, you know. To me, that's, you know, so to me, the way I feel is like, how about me? I was blindly saying the Pledge of Allegiance, like, and then knowing that, wait a minute, they can take my rights away from me.
What rights could they take away from you, Jesse?
They could take the rights that are constitutional rights, because it's not guaranteed under the, you know what I mean? The rights of the people that live in unincorporated territories, they're not guaranteed. They can be taken away.
Aren't they matters of statute, Jesse?
What's that?
Aren't they matters of statute?
Well, I don't know, but the fact that they can be taken away, I mean, can they take away those that live in the States?
You've done a good job with your talking points, Jesse. I'll give you that. But you need to stick with your talking points and not go away from your talking points.
I'm trying to learn too from you, Bob. So I'm just trying to. If you guys, you know, I'm trying to learn every day.
Good. You came to the right place.
I'm trying to see exactly. So I'm just trying to get a viewpoint from you, and you know, and appreciate your show and everything. And I'm just trying to learn from different viewers, different commenters, because, you know, I can't possibly know everything. And it's always good to get insight.
Yeah, well, knowing everything, that's kind of my job, Jesse.
I feel like it's pretty, you know, I just take offense to the way some of these things are talked about, Bavakwa, all these people. I mean, these guys are, you know, they're passionate about what they're doing, you know.
Well, you know, the way the left argues, Jesse, it's not enough to just disagree with someone. You have to say that you're offended by somebody. But anyhow, I got a break. If you want to hang on through the break, Jesse, you can, and I'll pick you up after the break, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Hey, it's Mom. Somebody forgot to thaw the chicken, so meet us at Chili's for 2 for $25. Oh, and congratulate your sister for making the basketball team. She's thrilled. Love you. See you at Chili's.
Enjoy 2 full meal combos for $25. An appetizer, 2 mouth-watering entrees like our crispy chicken breast, smoked barbecue quarter leg, or smoked jalapeno cheddar sausage. Served with corn on the cob and french fries. 2 bold combos for $25. A full-on meal deal available nightly for a limited time. Together, we Chili's.
The seventh inning stretch here on Tall Tales. It doesn't get any better than that. Let's see. Did I lose, Jesse?
No, that was Carl. We just dropped him. Carl can call back.
Oh, okay. So let's see. I still have Jesse on the line? Yeah. Okay. Yes. On line 2, right? Yeah. Okay, Jesse, before the break, what I was saying is that the way the left argues, it's not enough. It's not sufficient just to disagree with someone. You have to say that you were offended by his argument. And when you write columns in the newspaper about subjects that have a tendency to be contentious, being offended is not the armor that you could put on. And if Bavacqua can't, I don't know where you would be able to.
I see. Well, again, just claiming that they're the left and all that. Why, I just don't see them as being the left. I mean, they're just people out here trying to do what's right in their mind, or what they feel. And if people disagree to it, I mean, I don't think people should be teasing them or, calling them names. You know what I mean? These people are passionate about what they're doing.
Well,
I'm pretty sure the right, or if you want to call it, and then, I just don't believe in this whole left and right, and that kind of stuff is just, to be called that is pretty offensive. You know what I mean?
It's offensive. Well, I'm not going to stop, Jesse. And on the subject of passion, I'm passionate about my wife, right? But when it comes to things like politics, political status, government, good government, bad government, etc., I'm not passionate. I want to use my whatever intellect I have to deal with those kinds of things. And I appreciate people who are public servants who use the same approach, and the same with journalists and people that write in the newspaper. The fact that you're passionate about something just tells me that maybe you've turned off your thought process. So the fact that someone's passionate about something does not get him very high marks with me. And as far as Bavacqua is concerned, it's the old duck test. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, waddles like a duck, what do you think it is, Jesse?
So you're saying he's kind of like a propaganda? He's just spewing propaganda? Is that what you're?
I do. I see identity politics in everything that he says. I see him gaslighting American history in order to convince people that the situation that they're in borders between bad and intolerable, and that the only answer is independence. That's the way I read it.
Well, I really don't want to speak for him, but I'm just saying that, people like, and also people like Ned Pablo, people put him down, and maybe he's saying the wrong things to some people, but, it's time for, I guess it's a good discussion to have amongst everybody, because people really want to learn, and I think status quo is just not we have to have something better. There has to be something concrete. You can't just, you've been hanging on the status quo for over 100 some years.
Jesse, do you know of any other forum on the island where discussions like the one that you and I are having right now occur? Is anybody else talking about what you and I are talking about right now?
I would think so. I would hope so.
I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it, because I think Tall Tales is the only game in town where people are, in my particular case, bold enough to come forward here.
That's true. I'll give you that. Yeah.
And to come out and say, well, wait a minute, this independence thing, to me is the political status equivalent of the emperor's new clothes. And I'm going to keep doing it because, the very beginning of Tall Tales, I haven't done it for a while, but I have a read-in. And in my read-in, I say, trying to get everybody to agree isn't where progress occurs. It's finding out where we disagree and really hashing out our disagreements, because that's where learning really occurs.
Yes, yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm doing here on Tall Tales. I apply the duck test to what Bavacqua wrote, and some of the, there was an Issa Kelly Bowman, same thing. I applied the duck test to what she wrote, And to me, it was a duck. And if it's if it's a duck, I'm going to come out here and say it's a duck. I'm not going to pretend that it's a pigeon.
Okay, well, have you gotten together with Mr. Bavakwa or Dr. Bavakwa and talked about things, and maybe, maybe they should have some kind of public debate with, or public education where you have, this former senator and Dr. Bavakwa and everybody involved and really talk about this in a public forum,
Wouldn't that be the kind of thing we should be doing at our so-called decolonization commission, Jesse?
Yes, but maybe you should start because you're a well-respected man in the community, so you should maybe step out there and if you have time or, it would be another great service that you could do to the people of Guam, other than being on Tall Tales, but,
Well, I'll give you this, Jesse. Flattery will get you everywhere with me, so that's a good start.
And when we do get independence, we'll remember what you said: frugality. You gotta have frugality, priorities, and transparency.
Well, you're a guy that really
you have to be accountable. People have to be accountable for themselves. You have to be, and also hold accountable those who you elected, because that's what, whether you're left or right, those things are there for you to do. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll compliment you on your knowledge of Guam politics, Jesse, because those are the kinds of benchmarks that I tried to honor during my short tenure in office.
Yes, and those are things that not every nation should do. That should live on. If people who are governing, they should always remember that.
Okay, hey, you know what? It's been great.
I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. I mean, it's a long piece. It's a lot more than 2 cents.
I'll tell you what, Jesse. I will see your 2 cents and raise you a quarter. You have a license to call whenever you want. I'm glad you called. It's so much easier than dealing with your Facebook comments. So thanks.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty hard to. Yeah.
Thanks for calling, but I got to get to a couple of other callers.
Okay. All right, have a good one. Have a good day, and a good Memorial Day to all the veterans, too, and people that are still serving. Okay?
Thank you, Jesse.
Okay.
And let's see, I've got, on line 3, I've got Chris. Good afternoon, Chris. Hello, Chris. Wait a minute. Hello, Chris.
Half a day, Bob.
Half a day.
So I got a pithy question. I'm going to preface it.
A pithy question, Chris?
Yes, sir.
I've never known you to lisp, so let's give it a shot.
I'm gonna preface it. What a great way to lead into Memorial Day, yeah?
Right. Right.
No, really. I mean, this is exactly what our democracy is all about. The great debate you're having on your show right now.
Sure.
And so I wanted to make just 2 points before I preface the question. One is, I think that's why Francis had such difficulty with not establishing, and just like the previous caller left, not establishing such rules of engagement as a constitution before moving forward on such a leap to independence.
Uh-huh.
And the second point I want to make is, historically, and I've sat down with many elders and I've listened, and I've listened intently, and I understand the quote passion, right? I mean, and I'm not being disrespectful to say that. I mean, I think there's in any form of government, in any democracy, in any government or any social structure, you're going to have grievances, and the grievances, to some degree, have different forms of merit. But to move forward, here's my pithy question. And we've had this long discussion before, and I don't want to take up too much time. I know you've got other caller or callers. What is the goal? What do we desire? Even if we have a laundry list of grievances, how do you resolve that with a national government that is the most powerful government in the world? And not to discount even the smallest, David and Goliath, even the smallest David, to stand up to whatever it is. But what is the goal? And I think that's why even your earlier caller was talking about and asking you to describe the differences between the incorporated and unincorporated territory. And you eloquently said if we would relabel this and market it, maybe the Guam First campaign it would be when the situation and status were laid out and kind of compared to other jurisdictions that have full autonomy, such as states. You would see the differences and the benefits. But I would just that would be my pithy question. What is the goal? If it's to extinguish grievances, I don't know that you'll ever get there. If it's to have a better relationship with your partner where you think you either have an ability because of a position of strength, or you have through how that vote goes down and what's determined, or if you have ability by encouraging and improving your relationship, what improves your chances? Maybe that wasn't pithy, but I think it was a formidable question.
Yeah, it's maybe too complicated for my tired mind here at 5:45. Chris, let me just
3-day weekend, Bob.
let's start out with what is the goal, okay? And I'm going to start out with what is Bob's goal, okay? I want to live in a community that's governed by the rule of law,
right?
That has a government that's task is to secure and protect individual rights.
Correct.
A government that functions fairly well because it adheres to principles of subsidiarity, separation of powers, and an independent judiciary. That's correct. That's what I'm looking for. And as far as I'm concerned, that's where we are right now. Now, there are some things, and then I guess the other part of it would be this, Chris, that I would like to see that. I would like to see some tweaking, like a life tenure for our district court judge, a couple of other things like that. And then the other side of it is what Joe Sixpack is talking about all the time, pork, more pork.
Right.
You know, why does a CNMI get SSI and we don't?
Or equal pork.
Yeah, equal pork, as much pork as everybody else gets. Yeah. And I think our strongest point, I think we haven't used our strongest point. Our strongest point is that we are really important to the United States. Not that we're always crying about the things that the United States does to it and then we want to get away, the Bavacqua approach. But that, Guam, we faced down Kim Jong-un and he blinked first. We're tough out here. And the United States is really fortunate that we're here and that we do the things that we're doing. And because of that, the United States ought to be of such assistance as is possible. And carry that message out, through the traditional channels, and then go back and learn a lesson from Carlos Taitano. Carlos Taitano made friends with a couple of journalists when he was in the Army. And when the so-called walkout occurred in 1949, Carlos was able to get us national press. And that's how we got the Organic Act. But, we have to, in my humble destination, what I would like to see is us kind of putting aside our intellectual insularity and try to remind the rest of the country of how important we are to the country and how much it's in their interest to do the kinds of things that would help us.
I guess you weren't as challenged as you thought you were, Bob. That was a that was a soapbox I've ever seen one, and a good soapbox of that.
Yeah, and I banned soapboxes on Tall Tales for everybody but me.
That's the privilege of the host, right? Have a great weekend, Bob, and maybe next week we'll call in on pork chops.
Okay, very good. Thanks for calling, Chris. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Okay. So let's see. I got our Carl on hold, and I'm just about at the home stretch, right? Real Joe Cruz.
You got about 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
3 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, I'm going to put our Carl on the line. Can you talk fast, our Carl?
It's not my strength, but I'll do my best. One of the things I wanted to chime in about was about the issue of language. there was a period, you could tell me exactly what the time length was when speaking of English was, let's just say, strongly encouraged. But eventually that came to an end, as it should have. And, a lot of Chamorros, they spoke English and they also spoke Chamorro. I have an uncle and auntie, both Chamorro, 8 children. Not one of them speaks Chamorro. And they made the choice, as some did, because they felt there was advantages for success in life, of not speaking Chamorro to their children, which I think is sad, because they could have easily picked up 2 languages. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that has since gone away. And we do have tens of thousands of Chamorros locally and in the States that still speak the language. And they didn't do it because the government, in its benevolence, gave them classes. Over 99% of these people never took 5 minutes of class. They learned it in the home, and the language is saved or lost in the home. And some people, for whatever reason, decide to, they're not going to emphasize the language, and it starts to slip. And others, they speak Chamorro at home, because people are going to pick up the English outside, in school and just at their job and other places. So it's just personal choice, For an example of real cultural genocide, you need to go to some places I brought up before, like Tibet, where they were invaded in the 50s, and the Chinese communists outlawed the Chinese language. I mean, they were punished. They were thrown in jail for speaking it. That is what you call cultural genocide. They destroyed, over 6,000 Buddhist temples, killed over 1.2 million Tibetans, according to some estimates. So, the language is where it is, not because the government has used the force of government to enforce it. People just made different choices. Some chose to practice the language at home, which I think is a good thing, and some chose not to for their own reasons.
Tomorrow, Carl?
You put me to shame, Bob. You really do. I'm not a language guy. I never have been. I took a year of French, and it was the worst. It was in middle school, and it's the worst decision of my life. I'm not good at languages. The window of opportunity for me was when I was growing up, and I really wish my mom had spoken Chamorro to me at home, and it would have been so easy for me to learn it. And that is the place to salvage the language, is at home. The classroom, it's not going to happen really in the classroom, because as soon as the class is over, people tend to forget if they don't practice it. So anyway, those are a few of my thoughts.
Okay, well, thanks for calling in, Carl. And I guess you could probably do the same thing that our Tom is going to do on Monday. Just go into the archive and play a couple old episodes of Tall Tales, right?
Exactly.
All right.
I'll pretend like I'm calling in, but it won't be the same, though.
Okay. Okay, so we're going down the home stretch here. Churchill Downs, Call to the Post, home stretch of Tall Tales in a second.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
We have some really great home loan programs, but did you know we have great business loans too? Every day we're working with companies to purchase equipment, to buy or build properties, or make tenant improvements. We offer letters of credit, working capital, and term loans, and we make all of our credit decisions here. Commercial loans, commercial banking from Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Call to the Post. I got about 7 minutes to finish up another exciting episode of Tall Tales. And I don't have tears in my eyes, but it's pretty close because I know I won't be doing this for 3 whole days. And I feel really bad about it. It's going to be a real sacrifice for me. And even worse, I know it's going to be a real sacrifice for you, too, out there in our international radio listening audience. And it's also going to be a sacrifice for the real Joe Cruz. Right, real Joe Cruz?
Absolutely, sir, but I'm good at suffering.
Well,
that's one of my finest points.
Yeah, if you're going to be the producer of Tall Tales, you got to learn suffering really early, right? Okay, let's talk a minute then about language, about what it is and what it isn't, and some of the issues that weren't actually touched upon by Jesse, but perhaps bear some comment. I never learned English. I got it for nothing. It's my mother tongue. So I never had to take lessons to learn English. I never had to exercise any effort whatsoever. It just descended upon me like water in a shower. So, utungo fino tomorrow, le dididia, it's an appling tomorrow. And I actually had to try to do that, and it was kind of a rocky road, still a rocky road. And I'll tell you one little anecdote, real Joe Cruz. Way back in the 60s, I used to go into this store in Barrigada every day, and I used to order one of those little cartons of milk. And I did my best, and the shopkeeper didn't speak a word of English. Back in the early 60s, you'd find some people that literally could not speak English here, older folks. So I'd walk in there, and he'd greet me and ask me what I wanted, and I'd say, Malagutu lesi. And he'd say, Hafana klasi malagomo. And I'd say, Brushu. And he'd give me white milk. Because let me back up. He used to say, Hafana klasi malagomo. Chocolate pat brushu. And I'd ask for brushu. And I always got white milk. So I figured that the way that you say white milk in Chamorro is brushu. I know some of my international radio listening audience out there is chuckling because they know what I'm saying. Blue seal. But the closest that my friend could come to blue seal was brushu. So, but it was functional, and I learned, and I adapted, and I kept learning as time went on, to the point where I got to the point where I could at least shake and howdy in Chamorro. And as a teacher, back in the early 60s, if a kid was Chamorro, if he had one Chamorro parent, that kid spoke Chamorro. Now, maybe that kid wasn't able to write down a couple paragraphs of standard English, but he knew he could speak Chamorro. But somewhere along in there, in the early 60s, maybe the late 50s, we embarked on a mistake, on a thought process that was wrong. And we thought that the human brain is only capable of learning one language at a time. So if you wanted to be good in English, you couldn't confuse your brain with Chamorro. Well, we know better now, and we know that people are able to learn multiple languages at the same time in the right environment. Good proof of that is to go to Europe, where you'll find people who switch back and forth between 2 and 3 or 4 languages in a heartbeat. So the idea that in order to learn English, you had to not speak Chamorro was a wrong mistake, so to speak. But an awful lot of people bought into it. And because they wanted the children to be successful, and they thought that English was the key to success, they didn't speak Chamorro to the kids at home. And even more unfortunate, a lot of these parents were not very good models for English. For them, English was a second language. And that's where you got the things like brushu. So that the English that some of those kids learned wasn't as good as it might have been because of the model. So the parents might have been better off speaking Chamorro to the kids and letting the kids learn English somewhere else. Maybe, maybe not. But the point I want to make is that we had this wrong idea that English and Chamorro inside the same brain were antagonistic. Not so. And if you look around you probably know all kinds of people who are what I would call perfectly bilingual. They have native speaker competence in both English and Chamorro. So that can be done. So now let's go back to the Naval Administration. I think Jesse has abandoned his position that the number one goal of the Navy was to make everybody speak Chamorro. But, well, I'm running into that same situation. I got a lot to say, but the program's over, which means that you really want to tune in on Tuesday because I've still got a lot to say. And let's remember our fallen soldiers, sailors, Marines, etc. on Memorial Day and recognize the sacrifice that they made for us all. See you next Tuesday.